3 weeks. Just 3 brutal weeks were enough for Prince Harry to realize his entire love story might have been engineered long before he ever showed up in it. This wasn't a slow discovery, it wasn't gentle, it was a psychological ambush unfolding image by image, name by name, coincidence by coincidence, until the truth became too loud to ignore. It started with a photograph Harry couldn't stop staring at. The Croatia yacht picture had already detonated across the internet weeks earlier, laughed off by some, defended by others. Harry tried to move on. He really did. But something in that image wouldn't release him. Night after night, he zoomed in, zoomed out, stared, walked away, came back, stared again. His instincts screamed that the photo was hiding something. Then, one night, his eyes locked onto a detail he'd somehow missed before. On the edge of the yacht deck sat a navy blue canvas bag. Simple. Forgettable. Except for the gold lettering stitched neatly across the front. Soho House. Harry's stomach flipped. This wasn't just any yacht. This wasn't random luxury. This was a Soho House yacht. Member territory. Controlled territory. The same private world Meghan had lived inside for years. The same members' only ecosystem where power, ambition, favors, and introductions flowed quietly behind closed doors. Suddenly, the coincidence narrative collapsed. Harry felt the air leave his chest. He knew sleep wasn't happening. Not until he understood what that bag meant. With shaking hands, he opened his laptop and typed 3 names that had never looked threatening together until this exact moment. Marcus Anderson, Meghan Markle. The results loaded, and Harry went cold. Marcus Anderson had always been presented as harmless, quirky, stylish, a friendly face from Toronto, someone who just knew people. But what Harry uncovered told a very different story. Buried blogs, archived interviews, half-deleted society write-ups that didn't show up on the first page. Harry had to dig like a man chasing a crime scene that had been deliberately wiped. Every source told the same story. Marcus wasn't attending the scene, he was controlling it. He wasn't a consultant, he was an access broker. The man who decided who met whom. The invisible hand placing ambitious women into rooms filled with powerful men. Actresses with producers. Models with investors. Social climbers with gatekeepers. One article described him as the man who makes introductions that change lives. Harry leaned back, pulse pounding. Suddenly, Marcus's constant presence made sense. The front row seat at the wedding. The whispered conversations. The way he always seemed nearby, watching, smiling, quietly satisfied. And then the thought hit Harry so hard it made him nauseous. What if Marcus wasn't Meghan's friend? What if he was her handler? Harry clicked deeper. Old Toronto photo albums. Event galleries. Guest lists from elite charity nights. What followed were 6 hours that rewired everything he believed about his marriage. Photos placed Marcus and Meghan at the same exclusive events years before Harry officially met her. Polo matches, London galas, charity functions where Harry appeared in the background long before their love story was supposed to begin. Harry wanted it to be coincidence. He needed it to be coincidence. But hope died the moment he made the call. Late at night, with the house silent and Meghan asleep, Harry dialed someone he hadn't spoken to in years. A former Soho House insider from his own party days. Someone who knew that world intimately. Someone who wouldn't lie. When the man answered, Harry barely found his voice. "I need to ask you about Marcus Anderson." Silence. Long. Heavy. Telling. Then the sigh came. What followed wasn't gossip, it was confirmation. Marcus didn't run a social circle. He ran what insiders quietly called a finishing school. Not for etiquette, not for manners, for access. He identified ambitious women, trained them how to move in elite spaces, coached their image, refined their presentation, and then placed them strategically. He knew guest lists, he knew calendars, he knew where certain men would be and exactly when. He doesn't introduce people, the man said. He positions them. Harry stared at the wall as the puzzle pieces slammed together. Marcus had been at events Harry attended years before Meghan was supposed to exist in his life. Always close, always watching. And Meghan hadn't wandered into that world accidentally. She'd been preparing for it. Then another question surfaced, sharper and more dangerous. How did Meghan afford this life? The flights, Europe to New York to London, the designer wardrobe, the 5-star hotels during yacht weeks, the multiple Soho House memberships across cities. Harry knew her salary, he knew the math didn't work, so he made another call, this time to someone still connected to Soho House Toronto. The answer froze his blood. Meghan's membership wasn't discounted. It was fully comped. 5 years, not a single fee paid. When Harry asked who sponsored it, there was hesitation, long enough to feel deliberate. Then the answer came quietly. Marcus has ways, corporate accounts, anonymous approvals. Certain women don't get asked questions. Someone had been investing in Meghan, funding her rise, paying for her transformation from a cable show actress into a woman who could glide effortlessly through elite rooms. Harry started calculating. Flights, clothes, hotels, events, styling. The number climbed fast, tens of thousands a year, money Meghan didn't have. By now, Harry felt like his past had been edited without his consent. But the final blow was still waiting. One morning, he opened a drawer he hadn't touched since the wedding. The official guest list. 600 names, carefully categorized. Harry had never scrutinized Meghan's side before. He trusted her, not anymore. Marcus Anderson, front row, Soho House executives, regulars, members photographed with Meghan years before Harry, the blind date arranger, the familiar faces, the network. Harry grabbed a highlighter, then another. Out of 200 guests on Meghan's side, over 60 had direct Soho House ties. This wasn't family. This wasn't childhood. This was infrastructure. Then Harry saw a reception photo. Marcus standing with 4 executives, champagne raised, smiling like men who just completed an operation. The realization was unbearable. His wedding hadn't just been a celebration, it was a summit. And Harry finally understood something that kept him awake at night. He hadn't been chosen. He had been positioned. The voicemails were the last thing Harry wanted to touch. They sat buried in his phone like landmines, untouched for years, sealed off by anger, pride, and the belief that everyone had been trying to interfere with his happiness. He remembered the arguments, the shouting, the slammed doors. He remembered telling himself he didn't need warnings, didn't need protection, didn't need anyone questioning his choices. But now, nothing felt solid anymore. So one night, unable to sleep, heart pounding against his ribs, Harry scrolled back further than he ever had before. Past reminders, past jokes, past forgotten messages. Until he saw the date, November 2017. His thumb hovered. He knew exactly what this was. He pressed play. William's voice filled the room. Calm, low, careful. Nothing like the controlling villain Harry had painted him as in his head. Harry, you need to listen to me. Palace security ran background checks. Meghan has been part of the Soho House circle for years. Marcus Anderson's reputation is well known. He positions women. She's been photographed around people from your world since at least 2014. This isn't random. Please look into this before you propose. Harry didn't breathe. He replayed it again and again. The words landed differently now. There was no jealousy in them, no arrogance, just urgency. The kind that comes when someone knows something dangerous and doesn't know how to say it without being hated. His hands shook as he scrolled. Another voicemail. William again. Security flagged overlaps with your charity donors. Events tied to your circle. Marcus has deep connections here. This isn't about judgment, it's about pattern. Harry felt something crack open inside his chest. There was a third message. Shorter. Quieter. I'm asking you as your brother, please slow down. Harry dropped the phone. For years, he had told himself William was threatened, that the palace was racist, that everyone wanted to destroy his happiness, that Meghan was being unfairly targeted. But now, with everything he knew, the story flipped on its head. They hadn't been trying to stop him from loving her, they had been trying to stop him from being walked into a trap blindfolded. Harry sat there in the dark, staring at nothing, replaying every fight he'd had with his family, every accusation, every bridge he'd burned. He remembered how fiercely he defended Meghan, how aggressively he shut everyone out. And now the truth slithered in. He had never investigated because he didn't want to, because loving her felt like rebellion, like freedom, like finally choosing something for himself. And that was exactly what made him vulnerable. The next days blurred together. Harry stopped eating properly. Sleep became shallow, broken by flashes of memory. Smiles that now looked rehearsed. Stories that suddenly felt overpolished. Coincidences stacked so neatly they no longer looked accidental. He replayed their first meeting in his head. The blind date. How perfectly timed it had been. How effortlessly she had fit into his world. How she already knew how to to speak about Africa, charity, trauma, royalty. She hadn't learned those things after meeting him. She arrived fluent. Every introduction now felt staged. Every chance encounter suspicious. Every friend she brought into his life traced back, somehow, to Marcus. Harry opened old emails, old texts, old photos. The timeline tightened like a noose. She hadn't fallen into his world, she had been climbing toward it for years, and he was the final rung. One night, Harry stood in front of the mirror and barely recognized himself. The man staring back looked smaller, older, haunted. A man who had detonated his own life for a story that might never have been real. The most painful realization wasn't about Meghan. It was about himself. He had wanted to be chosen so badly. Not for his title, not for his duty, not for the crown he never wanted, but for who he was underneath it all. The wounded boy, the spare, the man desperate to believe someone loved him without agenda. And now that belief lay in ruins. Because if this had been positioning, then love had been part of the strategy. Harry began to understand why the truth took 3 weeks to surface instead of years. Because once you see the pattern, it never stops revealing itself. The smiles, the timing, the access, the money, the silence around certain details, the way questions were always redirected, the way doubt was painted as betrayal. He remembered moments when his instincts had flared, only to be smothered by reassurance, when concerns were labeled as paranoia, when anyone who questioned the narrative was cast as an enemy. Isolation hadn't been accidental, it had been necessary. Harry lay awake most nights now, staring at the ceiling, listening to the quiet weight of everything he had lost. His family, his country, his identity, all sacrificed for a version of love that might have been carefully constructed. He thought about his mother, about how exposed she had been, about how manipulation wears charm as camouflage, about how vulnerable hearts are the easiest to guide. And the whisper that followed him into the dark was the most devastating of all. If this had been engineered, then what part of it was real? He replayed conversations, searching for cracks, for moments of unscripted truth, for anything that belonged solely to them. But doubt poisoned everything it touched. Harry didn't confront her. Not yet. Because confronting her meant accepting the possibility that the woman he married never truly existed in the way he believed she did. And that kind of loss doesn't scream. It suffocates. Somewhere deep inside, Harry understood this wasn't just a scandal. It was an identity collapse. A reckoning with the idea that his greatest act of rebellion had been quietly orchestrated by people who understood his weaknesses better than he ever had. The boy who wanted to be loved had become the man who realized he had been selected. And that realization followed him everywhere. In silence, in memory, in the dark. And once a truth like that enters your mind, it never leaves. It waits. And it eats you alive.